Right away, begin with questions that we have from those who are with us in the audience. Any questions, please raise your hand so we can get a microphone that way. Rick in the back, Rob.
The tutelage of D'Anthony, at what point did you start the one-on-one sessions with him? And is it as close as an interest as you've taken into, whether it's a non-quarterback or something over the coach?
No, we started in camp. We've done it, whenever time we used to do it with Kenyon Barner and Ed Dixon when we were flopping those guys around. I actually met with Kenyon and D'Anthony a little bit more in camp, and then Kenyon obviously got banged up in the first game, so we kind of moved him exclusively back to running back, and then when we started to get healthy again, we started to bounce him around again. So it's just a matter of what we have available to us, and it just makes it easier, I think, for everybody involved. It makes it easier for him, and it also makes it easier for Scott and his meetings and Cam and his meetings, that all of a sudden it's not disrupted halfway through where all of a sudden someone comes in and then we got to come to this.
Rick.
Montez Burfict from Arizona State has kind of a reputation as being a very emotional player. Have you ever had a player that played on the edge the way that he does, and how did you manage that so that penalties and those kinds of things weren't an issue for that player?
I haven't had a player like that, but I've watched him play every game he's played this year, and I think he's played very, very well, and is doing a great job.
Rob?
What would the return of Michael Clay mean to your linebacker depth and the rotations you use when he's able to get back?
Just another guy to get back in there. We've been shortchanged there a little bit. Those guys have been playing a little bit more snaps than we're usually accustomed to, but it would add another guy to throw into that mix with Stuck and Kiko, and Rodney Hardwick has actually come along and played pretty well when he's gotten in there, and then Derek Malone. But during the course of the season, you're going to need as much depth as you can. Especially if other guys get banged up and all of a sudden they're not at 100%, they're playing at 85%, but they're still playing. It just the more we can get in there, the better off we're going to be. And it's something that we kind of really stress on defense, is that we can get that guys in. I think the production we're getting out of Josh in Bo is because we play both Josh and Bo. You know what I mean? So it's a situation where obviously it's the one position, I think, where we don't have as much depth that we normally have. Last year we had Spence, Case, Stuck, Bryson Littlejohn, and Clay inside. It's just getting us kind of back to the numbers that we're usually used to rotating.
Against Cal in particular, did you lean on DeWitt and Kiko?
Probably a little bit more, yeah.
Okay.
Just because of the course of the game and how it was expressing itself.
Molly?
How are preparations with Trey Carson going? And can you talk a little bit about whether it's your system or the players in the system that's contributing to the success?
Preparations with Trey are going great. Trey's one of those guys that, a lot like a Michael Clay and a lot like D'Anthony, that from day one there was just, it seemed like he just intuitively wasn't a freshman. He had a knack to things. He had a maturity to himself that we knew really early on that this kid was going to play football for us this year. Has contributed very well for us on special teams. And when he's gotten his opportunities to run the ball and get in the game, he's done a really nice job with it. And like anything, it's not the system, it's always the players. And if it was a system, everybody would run the same system, then they'd be successful with it. But the college football has always been, and professional football, same thing. It's a personnel-driven game, and when you have good personnel, your job, I think, as a coach is to put them in a situation where they have a chance to be successful and then get out of their way and let them go play. And we've been real fortunate, since I've been here, is that we've got some really talented players that fit and play the game the way we want it to be played. So.
Dirk?
Coach Brock Osweiler, like largest quarterback in Division I football, maybe in every level. Is there a key to bringing down a guy of his size? Does it help that you faced Nick Foles already, who's also pretty big?
Does it help? Probably, but we didn't do a great. It's tough to bring down Nick Foles. We hit Nick a ton. And the one thing I've said since that game, and I'll continue to say, as tough a kid as I've ever seen, he just kept coming up and slinging it. Brock is a big physical. You got to wrap him up. You're not going to take him down with an arm tackle. But he's also fairly athletic. He was offered a basketball scholarship at Gonzaga, as I was told, and he can move. And he does a good job of buying time in the pocket and keeping plays alive. So, obviously it's a combination of coverage and not letting him get comfortable and throwing the ball on time. But then when we generate a pass rush, we really need to wrap up when we hit him, because he's not going down easily just because he is 6'8", 240 pounds.
Sam?
Talk a bit about Eddie Pleasant and what he means to the defense.
Eddie's done a really nice job. That transition, he moved from linebacker to safety, and this is year 2 for him in that position. And the last couple of games has been, the most outstanding player for us on the defensive side of the ball. He's a physical presence back there. He's got great closing speed, and really got a real good understanding of what we're trying to do on the defensive side of the ball now, and starting to really become the playmaker that we expected him to be.
Ken?
Deion Jordan has made some plays for you defensively this year. New position for him. How's he handled that? What can we expect looking forward?
Deion's done a really nice job, kind of transitioning. He was more of a, tight end, side end last year for us. Now he's playing a little bit more to the open side. Because of his athletic ability, he gives us a lot more versatility. We can drop him into coverage, we can rush him off the edge. He's kind of playing like the same position that Kenny Rowe used to play, kind of a hybrid position for us. But it speaks to his athleticism. He came here as a wide receiver, and played wide receiver as a true freshman, and then played tight end as a redshirt freshman, and then we eventually moved him over after that fall. And during the spring, it was the first time he ever played defense for us. So just getting him acclimated, played all last year at defensive end, and really shined, I think, at certain times for us. But now I think it's really, he's found his true spot, and that's where Deion belongs. He's long, he's athletic, he can run, he's physical. As he starts to get more comfortable in that position, I think we're going to see more productivity out of him.
Steven?
Chip, not saying that Michael James won't play, but if in fact he doesn't, how comfortable do you feel with the rest of the backs that you have to carry the ball?
The other three guys?
Yeah.
I feel extremely comfortable with those guys.
And what do they sort of, as a unit, bring to the table that could pick up that slack?
It really is the same thing. I look at Kenyon as the same thing as the Michael, in terms of what he can do, what plays you can call, and how you can, implement him into your game plan. And that's what we've always done. We don't, when I'm calling plays on the sideline, it's not like, oh God, Kenyon's and now let's not run these, let's run these. It's, we don't even blink. And it's really the same thing with Trey and DeAnthony, is that our offense doesn't change a lick with those guys. They've all been recruited to play in this system, and we know what those guys can do. So we feel very, very comfortable if he's not going to be able to play.
And how ready do you think true freshmen like Trey and DeAnthony are to shoulder even more of a load?
I think they're ready. I think you look at what DeAnthony did last Thursday night against a real good Cal team. He really can change the landscape of a football game because of his speed. So I'm excited to see those two guys in there if we get an opportunity to get them in.
Rick?
Excuse me. Dennis Erickson has always had big, fast, physical defenses. Is this one a prototypical Dennis Erickson defense, or has he got sprinkles with this one?
No, this is really a typical Dennis Erickson defense. Very well coached, very gap sound. They play a lot. The one thing about this group, I think I heard the other day, that they got 30 seniors on this football team. And they played a ton of football. And all those guys you're seeing out there, Perfect, I've seen for a couple of years. Jamar Jarrett for a couple of years, Shelly Lyons, Colin Parker, all those guys have been there for a long, long time. So they got a great understanding of what their defense is, and then they have, even more importantly, they got a great understanding how offenses are trying to attack them. So it's a fast, physical team that creates a lot of turnovers, and it's going to be a big challenge for us offensively.
Jake?
Osweiler started here as a true freshman, I think 2 years ago, and you didn't see him last year. How much has he grown since that game 2 years ago?
I think he's grown just from an experience standpoint. He's played some really big games this year. They played Missouri in overtime. They played Illinois at Illinois. He beat USC. So obviously he's grown, and that's the one thing I think for anybody in college football that you can't manufacture. You can't manufacture experience. So to get your first start a couple years ago here, but now to come back after being the starter this year and going into Game 6 for him, I think he's obviously grown as a quarterback, and you can see it in his play. I think he's playing very, very well right now.
Dwight?
Chip, obviously, Dennis Erickson's been around a long time. In your preparations, how much is preparing for personnel and how much is preparing for a coach? Obviously, Dennis has a track record of how he likes to play.
It's real true, Dwight, and it's getting an understanding of what he's doing. The one thing I think is different is he changed his offense a year ago, and went to more of a spread attack when they brought Noel Mazzoni in as the offensive coordinator. They had been kind of a different type of one-back operation before that, but defensively they've been very similar for a long, long time. So you do prepare for both. Is what is that guy or that guy who's calling plays or calling defenses, what does he really want to do? What's his kind of makeup? Is he an all-out blitz guy every down? Is he let's bend but don't break type operation? And then you start to look at the personnel and how he tries to implement them and fit them in. But it is a combination of both.
Molly?
Chip, you mentioned this earlier, meeting with Anthony Thomas instead of having him meeting with position coaches. Can you tell me a little bit about those meetings and why you decided to go that way with Anthony?
We've done that for a while here. And as I said earlier, Molly, when we start cross training a couple guys and they got to play a couple positions, it makes it difficult on them. It makes it difficult on the position coach, because if Coach Campbell's spending time in the running back meeting going over wide receiver plays and what's going on with the other running backs, they're not paying attention during that, or they don't have to listen. Or if Coach Frost now is trying to cover running back plays when he's in the wide receiver meeting, how does it work? And we've done that here since I've been here. We've had some kids. Ed Dixon in the past has met with me. Kenyon Barner in the past has met with me. I met with Kenyon and DeAnthony a lot during camp. In the morning they went to their position meetings, at night they came to meetings with me. So as they start to play more than one position, it just makes it a little bit more efficient. But it's the same meeting time. We meet for a half hour just like they meet in the other, every other position meets, and it's pretty detailed. We do some film study, look at the opponent defense, then go over our game plan, what we're going to do, and then watch practice tape.
Jesse.
Chip, can you talk about Anthony Gilden and his progression as a player since he's been here, and now him kind of taking on more of a leadership role as an older guy?
Yeah, Anthony's probably been the real true leader back here in the secondary for us, and has really taken on a great leadership role and really mentoring those young kids. And we do have some young kids, with Troy Hill and Terrence Mitchell and Efo back there. But Anthony's one of those kids, when we're on kickoff return and he's not on the kickoff return, he's the first guy running down on the scout team. And when you see a fifth-year senior doing that, all of a sudden it kind of gets contagious. And then the next guy that's over there next to him is Eddie Pleasant, covering kicks on the kickoff return. When we're doing kickoff return, they're not on our kickoff return, but they're trying to contribute and trying to help. And they both really lead by example. They both take a lot of pride, in being seniors and being fifth-year seniors here, and leaving their mark on this place. And leaving their mark not just because of how they say it, but really how they practice every day and what they expect our players to do. And I've really been really happy in terms of how Anthony's progressed since he's been here, and exactly what you kind of want. Really took a lead from some of the guys that we had last year. He's a lot, kind of took that role that Talmadge Jackson had last year in the secondary, and I think Anthony's done a really good job of taking those young guys under his wing and showing them how things are supposed to be done.
Hold on just a second. Natalie, we're going to go to the phones. Any questions waiting for Coach Kelly?
I have a question for this time.
Please press *1 on your telephone keypad if you have a question. Questions?
You have a question from the line of Marcus Burgess with KPNW.
Thanks, Coach Kelly. Can you talk a little bit about the impact a guy like Montez Burfict has on your game plan during the week?
Obviously, one of the top, if not the top linebacker in the conference, and you've got to be aware of where he is on every play. It's one of those deals where you got to know where 7 is. They do a good job with him. Obviously, he's in the middle of the action most of the time, but they seem like they're blitzing him a little bit more and making sure that he creates some pressure on the quarterback, trying to get some mismatches in your protection. And he's just a tenacious player that plays all out all the time. So you got to make sure that you're very, very aware of where 7 is on every play.
Any more questions, Natalie?
At this time, you have no further questions.
We'll go back here. Ken.
Yeah, Chip, you were quite complimentary of Arizona's receivers as a group. How does this group of receivers, Arizona State, match up?
It's similar. I don't think it's a little bit more spread out. They don't have the Jaron Kleiner, maybe top receiver in the conference, but as a group, it's very similar. They've got really good size in Robinson and Wiley, and then they got kids like Flew and those guys that are just great route runners, have tremendous hands, and always seem to come up with big plays when they need to make them. You throw Jamal Miles in there, who's just an explosive guy that can really make some plays, and some of those other guys. As a group, then they just keep kind of rotating them in. So, they get into some 3rd and longs, and you think that the defense got to stop, and then all of a sudden one of those receivers comes up with a big catch on a play, or a run after a catch on a play, and converts 3rd down. So it's right up there with Arizona in terms of the whole group of receivers that we're going to face, and it's not just slanted one way where it's, hey, find out where such and such is and let's roll coverage to them. Is that they spread the ball out probably better than anybody in the conference in terms of how they distribute their catches.